Okay, so this is part of my collection. Wanted to kind of go through them a little bit with you here. Let's see. Up here on the top shelf, all the way over to the left is FA18 F Super Hornet. And again, all of these models are in 1/48 scale. Next to it is a Blue Angels F18 Hornet. That's a F18 Alpha. It's one of the early model F18s. And next to it is an FA18B twin seat model from VF106. The B model is a tester's kit that was given to me. Horrible build, but in the end it turned out decent enough anyway. The Blue Angels model, it's actually a rebuild. When I first built it, it was a let's say VFA87 Hornet, but it was quite an old build too, and so I didn't like it. I wanted to rebuild it. I got the Blue Angels decals, and so I basically took it all apart and then rebuilt it again. So yeah, and the Super Hornet, the FA18F, this is in the markings of VFA32, and that is the command that I retired out of. Now what makes this particular model kind of special to me was when I retired, my retirement flag was actually flown in Aircraft 100 from VFA82. The pilot and the Rio, the second seater in the back, they actually stretched that flag out between them, and another plane flying in formation with them took a photo. And here it is. Now, next plane in my collection is an F4 Phantom II. This is an F4S, later Navy version. It is in the colors of VFA32 also. The F4, what kind of makes that special to me is, well, first of all, it's just a badass looking airplane. But when I was going through my initial training after joining the Navy, we were in Millington, Tennessee, and we worked on an F4. We dropped an engine, reinstalled the engine, and then we actually went out and started the engines up, and I got to sit in the cockpit and run the engines up, and that was a blast, especially after just joining the Navy. I thought I was in heaven at the time. Next to it is a RA5C Vigilante. This kit, as I recall, was a real pain in the butt to build. But the top halves of the fuselage didn't go together very well, and because it's such a large airplane, they tend to droop a lot. So I actually had to buy a balsa wood structure that went inside the fuselage just to basically hold it up so that it doesn't droop over time. So looking like that was probably a good move, because this thing is, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old now, and it's still holding its shape pretty well, so pretty happy with that. Next to that is a F8 Crusader. This is known as the last of the gunfighters. You can see the gun ports on the side. It was really the last Navy airplane for a while that had internal guns. So the pilots really loved the fact that they could go out and dogfight with guns. This is back Vietnam era, by the way. So, but anyway, this plane is in the markings of VF11. That was one of the squadrons that was in our carrier air group the last time that I went out on a carrier before I retired, so I thought I'd put their markings on this one. Now down on the next shelf, trying to move my lighting a little bit and see if we can get a little bit better here. So yeah, there we go. Okay, so here in the front is the A7 Corsair 2. This is an A7E. It's in the markings of VA46. That was the first command that I was in the Navy. So really tough little airplane. Could carry a lot of weight, a lot of ordnance. Had really good range. Of course, they called them legs. Had long legs. But this was the first kit that I actually built after I retired out of the Navy. So I had been out of modeling for a very, very long time. So not a whole lot of detail went into this one. I didn't really know what I know now as far as how to detail different things and how to make them look realistic. But it still turned out okay. It's a good representation. And definitely every time I look at it, it brings back memories of, you know, my first time. So yeah, and she's been sitting here videoing me the whole time. In the back is a A1 Skyraider. This is actually the E variant. It's an electronic warfare variant of the Skyraider. I know you can't really see it all that well. I will do individual videos for each one of these planes, so yeah, just kind of stay tuned. But anyway, the Skyraider here in the back, kind of fictitious markings. I could not find markings that I wanted on it. It came with Marine markings, and like I said, everything I've got in here is pretty much Navy, so I wanted the Navy markings. But I'll talk about that more a little bit in detail later. Sitting here in the middle in the back is an A6E Intruder. Now it is in the markings of VA75, and again, they were one of the squadrons that was in a carrier air group with us. I had a buddy that was in that squadron. He was actually a roommate of mine for a while down in Jacksonville, Florida. So I kind of built it a little bit as a tribute to my friendship with him. But anyway, that was probably one of the most difficult models that I've built thus far. And the reason why I say that is because it has a lot of detail in it. I mean, I actually did a modification kit to where the intakes are open. The kit came, they were closed off, but I don't know if you can see it really well. But yeah, so the intakes are open, and it actually has engines in it, or what look like engines. So lots and lots of detail. Took a lot of time to build that one, and again, I'll do another video on it and kind of explain some of the other things there. Next to this is the A4 Skyraider. This is also in the VA46 markings. Again, my first command when I was in the Navy, so you know, I thought it was rather cool that, hey, there's another model out there that has VA46 markings. Now, another thing about this particular aircraft, the real aircraft anyway, don't know if you can see it real well, but it says USS Forrestal on the side. This is the aircraft that John McCain, later to be Senator John McCain, not a real favorite of mine after his political career started, but I still respect the fact that, you know, he was in the Navy, he was a pilot, he served during Vietnam. But he was actually in this aircraft on the flight deck of the Forrestal when the Forrestal fire broke out. This aircraft was destroyed in that fire, and of course, as you know, John McCain managed to escape the fire. But that's neither here nor there. That's just a little history on the markings of this aircraft. I think I skipped one. I sure did. I skipped a level here. The Navy actually had some aircraft that the Air Force flew. Now, I'm going to skip back just a second. Like the F4. The F4 was originally designed for the Navy, and the Air Force liked it, and so they got a version of it. And later on, they went on and put a gun in theirs in the F4E. The Navy never had an internal gun in their F4s. The A7s, originally designed and built for the Navy. A7A, Bs, and I want to say the C model. But the Air Force got the A7D model, which my dad actually worked on those for a while he was in the Air Force. So yeah, a Navy designed aircraft that the Air Force actually adopted. Now up here is an F5E Tiger Shark. The Navy uses these for aggressor training. Basically, they'll fly simulated Soviet and other foreign enemies, if you will. They'll fly their tactics using these aircraft, and the reason why they do that is it's a dissimilar aircraft, but it flies very much like the MiG-21, as so they say. So that's the reason why the Navy uses these to train their pilots to fight against some of the foreign aircraft. Now, next to this is a T-34C Turbo Mentor. It's a training aircraft, and it's the only training aircraft that I have in my collection right now. Thing about this plane was, and it is in the markings of a plane that was used by the Atlantic Training Command out of Oceania. I actually got a backseat ride in the actual aircraft, 02. So I wanted to build a model of it, and it took a while for me to find the model. They're not very popular. This is actually a Czech model, Czechoslovakian model, but I painted it blue, and then to find the markings again was rather difficult. The shark's mouth on it and everything that came with the original kit, so that was pretty easy. But everything else, the white markings, which are not really all that popular, so I had to find those elsewhere and kind of piece it together to make it look like the plane that I flew in. So, but it turned out really well. Tough little airplane, no longer in service. And actually, the actual aircraft, the T-34C, this particular one, can't see the serial number on it right now, 638. It is at the Hickory Air Museum in Hickory, North Carolina. So that is the airplane that I flew in the back seat. Actually got, I don't know, 20-30 minutes of stick time flying it. So thought that was pretty cool. Next to that, a F-16B. This is a two-seat version. The Navy flew F-16Ns for a while, as well as the Bs. These are former Air Force airplanes. But again, aggressor roles. They fly tactics of foreign militaries such as Russia and so on. But it's supposed to simulate the MiG-29 very well. Now next to it, F9 Panther. This is the straight wing version. They had the Cougar, which came out of F9 Cougar, which was a swept wing version of this same airplane. Now this kit, very poor kit, very poor. Had very little detail to it. I actually did an awful lot to try and bring this airplane or this kit up to speed. I opened up the intakes, which they were originally just closed off, so I had to do some well, I guess you could call it engineering. I had to figure out how to make the intakes look real. There's a little fencing on the wing just outside of the intake there. I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of blurry. But that fence, I had to make that because that wasn't part of the kit. All the little intake holes and the nose wheel was way too big, so I had to kind of narrow it, cut it down. The tail, the tail planes were just too thick, so I had to sand them down and kind of thin them out a little bit. This airplane had no ordnance on it whatsoever, so I scratch built the little rockets, and of course I put the bombs on there from another kit. Yeah, did a lot of work to try and bring this airplane up to speed. Let's see, the ejection seat also. That's not the kit, or not the seat that came with the kit. So I replaced it and kind of did a little bit of detail to it. It actually turned out rather well, but it is a good representation of a F9. And so you can see I've got quite a few Navy aircraft here, spanning from current aircraft with the F-18F all the way back to Vietnam era aircraft. One of the last ones I'm going to show you here, trying not to get in front of my light, is the A3 Whale. This is also 1/48 scale, but as you can tell by looking at it compared to some of the other airplanes, this was a big airplane. It was a very big airplane. It was designed as a bomber. It had an internal bomb bay. This particular version that I built here is an electronics version. Later in the career, they had so many different versions of the A3s that if I was to tell you the exact version of this one, I'd probably be wrong. But this was a very challenging kit to build just because it was so big. It's got so much detail in it. There's so many parts to it. And I actually bought some aftermarket pieces to go on that. And I'll describe some of those when I do my video later. So, alright, below that is an F4U Corsair. Now that is not 1/48 scale, and that's actually a pretty old build. I think I've had that one for, I would say, maybe 10 years, maybe longer than that even. It's just one that I had. It made it through all the different moves and this and that, and you know, throughout my career. And I actually kind of redid it, repainted it a little bit, made it look a little bit better. But that's 1/32 scale, if I didn't say that already. And for a large scale model, it does kind of lack a lot of details. It really does. But I love the Corsair. I always have, always will. So that's kind of the reason why it's still here. I have a 1/48 scale Corsair in a box that I just haven't gotten around to build. I got a bunch of actually 1/48 scale aircraft in boxes, and I'll show you those in a minute. Now, yes, I am retired Navy. This is some of my stuff, little memorabilia. So that's my charge book from when I made Chief in the Navy. That's my hat that I wore when I retired. Actually, 2 hats. And didn't really show you these earlier. These are all coins that I got through my Navy career. Different people gave them to me. I've got one in there that came from one of the Blue Angels. I've got some pretty high-ranking officials that had handed me a coin here or there. So, yeah. Small collection of coins. Okay, so some of you may have noticed that in my last section I was talking about Navy aircraft from present all the way back to basically the Korean War. Sometimes even further with some of them that I've got that I haven't built. But anyway, I did not mention the iconic F14 Tomcat. Well, I'm going to take care of that right now. I've got several F14 models in my collection. I've actually got this poster of an F14. These are commemorative posters that were made when the F14 was retired from active duty service in the Navy. This model here in front of it is a model that my wife bought me for Christmas. Honestly, I don't even know the scale of this. This is one of those models that the panels come off and show all the internal workings and stuff like that. But I just think the F-14 is such a sexy aircraft, and it looks so much better when it's put together and flying. So I actually put all the panels on it and just kind of displayed it this way. Then I've also got this small 1/72 scale. I want to say that's something like a Franklin Mint. I don't know if it's exactly Franklin Mint or not, but that's in the markings of VF41. Was with them, well, next to them in one of the hangars for part of my career. And that is an actual tail hook that came off of an F14. It's been used. It was worn beyond serviceable limits, and of course, being a troubleshooter on the flight deck, was able to get my hands on one when they were being changed out. Now moving on, this is probably by far my favorite Tomcat model that I've got. This is a Hobby Boss 148 scale kit, and I built it with the Jolly Rogers VF103. This was after they had actually taken over the skull and crossbones from VF84 when they were decommissioned. But so yes, I was in VF103. We did several deployments, Saratoga, I don't remember the other ship right now. 6 different deployments, so keeping the names of the ships straight sometimes isn't very easy. But this is kind of my tribute to my time in VF103. Now, one of the interesting things about VF103 while I was there was we actually had 3 different tail designs while I was in that squadron. We had the bones, which you see here, but we also, when I first joined the squadron, we had this club and clover leaf design on the tail of our aircraft. And yes, this is a VF103 airplane, F14 Bravo. This is a Revell 148 scale model kit. Decent kit. Not a whole lot of detail in it, but I actually bought a couple of aftermarket pieces to go on, well, pretty much all of my F14 models. I bought aftermarket pieces to kind of make them look a little better, in my opinion. So yes, this was early VF103, or at least early when I was in the command. I was there for 4 years, and we had 3 different tail designs. The second tail design, while I was there, is we went to this, they called it the cranked arrow. Cranked arrow, yes. But kind of the significance of this particular airplane, and not sure if you can see it says Fleercat. Got some nose art on it, and we had a guy in our squadron, his name was Peltier. He painted that nose art on the airplane. But we were the squadron that was used for test and evaluation of this lantern pod that you see hanging, this gray pod right there. It is a low altitude night terrain infrared navigation. Anyway, it stands for lantern. Or that's what lantern stands for. But it was a targeting pod, and it basically made the F-14, sorry about, got my light in the way there, it made the F-14 into a bomber, whereas before the F-14 was strictly air-to-air. Now the F-14 was an air-to-ground platform, and they could laser designate their own targets, and drop laser bombs. So yeah, that was the introduction of the Bombcat, and we were the first squadron to take that system to sea. And of course, by the time we took it to sea, we were VF103 with skull and crossbones. But as you can see, I've got 2,000-pound laser guided bombs hanging underneath and on the belly of that one. So very interesting tour that I had in VF103. Lots and lots of things happening while I was there. Anyway, yeah. So the next one down here, this is a VF102 airplane, and that was the Diamondbacks. I was in this command when 9/11 happened. We were actually getting ready to deploy aboard USS Theodore Roosevelt. 9/11 took place. It was a Tuesday, and we were scheduled to deploy on the Roosevelt on 9/19. So we were ready to go. Had all of our stuff, all our ducks in a row, and that was kind of the deployment. I think, in my personal opinion, it was the best deployment that I had been on. We had a purpose, we had a mission, we went out and we did it, and I think we did it rather well. And yeah, so laying here in front of it, this little black and red lanyard, that is actually an arming lanyard for a laser guided bomb that was dropped during the Operation Enduring Freedom campaign, and it was dropped by this aircraft 102. So a little bit of piece of history there, and you see I got this book over here too. That book has photos of this aircraft. Actually, there's a photo of me in that book as well. Of course, you got to know exactly who you're looking for to find me, because it's a group photo of everybody that was in the squadron. But great tour. I ended up making chief in the Diamondbacks after we came back from that deployment. We got rid of the F-14s. That was right before they were retired, a couple years before they were retired from active duty. But we got rid of the F-14s. We went to Lemoore, California. We picked up Super Hornets out there, FA18Fs, and then we went on to fly the Super Hornet. But yeah, I made chief in VFA or VF102, VFA102. In between the transition is when I made chief. That's what the little rock there was. Somebody painted that supposedly as a tribute, for me making chief. You see the the red hair on it and everything. So yeah, that was kind of cute, and it's a keepsake now. The next and last Tomcat that I have currently is also a Revell kit. This is a F14 Delta, a D model, but it's in the markings of VX9. Now, this particular aircraft that I have portrayed here with these markings, this was the last F14 that was ever built. VX9 was a test and evaluation squadron, and they're the ones that came up with a lot of the changes that were done on the Tomcat over the years. They're the ones that tested, evaluated, like bomb separation and how well would all that work. But they were actually behind us in VF103 with the Lantern project. So it was kind of cool that we actually kind of took over their role, if you will, as far as test and evaluation went for that Lantern project. But anyway, this particular aircraft is now at NES Oceana as a gate guard. It is on display just inside the front gate at NES Oceana. So, but yeah, again, the last Tomcat ever built. So that's the significance of that model being in my collection. So there you have it. That's my Tomcat collection currently. Chances are it's going to grow more in the future, but for now that's where it stands. So, and I'm going to show you a couple of the models that I have waiting in the wings to be built. Okay, so these are some of the models that I have in progress or waiting to be built. This F3D Sky Knight, I have worked on it some, but it's a long way from complete, obviously, because it'll still fit in a box. But a very rare aircraft. and actually a pretty rare kit, to be honest. It's a limited edition, so I wanted to take my time and do it right. Now, I always thought the Douglas F4D Skyraider was a really sweet looking airplane, but I got that kit, and I'm waiting to build it. You remember the Blue Angels plane that I showed you before? This is the same kit that one came from, and I got this one at a flea market, real cheap, 1/48 scale. Not the best detailed model, but for the price, I figured, what the heck, I'll go ahead and build another Hornet. I got the SBD Dauntless that I'm waiting to build. Yes, this goes back to World War II now. So yeah, I've been building, I guess, from current back. I told you that I had another Corsair that I was waiting to build. This is actually one that my wife had started, and she just never got very far with it. So not real sure what we're going to do. It's actually painted pink. I don't know if I'm going to leave it pink or not, but we'll see how that turns out. This Matchbox kit, very old kit. Matchbox has been out of making model kits for quite some time, but this kit was given to me by a friend of mine down in Georgia. I told him that I was looking for one of these. It's a FJ4 Fury, and so he gave me the kit and said, you know, I've got 2 of these already, you can have this one. So really awesome that he did that. Another one of the kits that I picked up out at the flea market, Dassault Raphael. Now, yes, this is not a Navy airplane. It is a French Navy airplane, but kind of the significance of this is when I was on board USS Harry S. Truman. We were over in the Mediterranean, and we had several of these Raphael aircraft that came on board, and they actually conducted flight ops from our carrier for it was about a week. So it was really neat to see one of these up close, you know, put my hands on it and everything. And so when I saw the kit, and it's 1/48 scale also, I'm like, yeah, I gotta have it. Super Hornet F18E, Aratelli. Don't really know a whole lot about this kit. It looks to be okay. The reviews that I've read online say that it's a pretty decent build. I know that I've got a F18F Super Hornet model already, but the E is a single seat, so I figure, okay, let's go ahead and get that one. Again, this was at the flea market, just one of those prices that I couldn't walk away from. And finally, you see the Embraer 175. I work for Embraer, so when I saw this kit, I was like, yeah, you know, I want to have that. I want to build it eventually. Kind of breaks from my Navy collection, but because that's the company I work on these airplanes on a fairly regular basis now. So anyway, wanted to add that into my collection. So there you go. These are all the aircraft models that I have waiting to be built. And of course, I also have cars. Yeah, you can see down there. This is a fairly large scale Camaro. I've got models that are in here. I got some of my stuff in here, so yeah. Anyway, definitely a habit, a hobby. I've kind of backed away from it for a while, but eventually I'll get back around to getting these built and adding them to my collection. So hope you enjoyed the tour. Certainly check back. I'm going to be doing videos on all of the aircraft one at a time that I have in my collection, as well as some of the cars that I've got in my collection too. So and I haven't even showed you those. So anyway, check back periodically, and I'll talk about them, you know, some of the challenges with the build, some of the things that I did differently to kind of customize them, make them my own. And you can leave comments and ask me questions, and again, I'll try and get back to you as I can. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.